Well, I always planned to make this before the release of Silksong, just didn't think Team Cherry would give me literally 2 weeks to prepare. Awesome. Nothing like no-lifing a game again to get myself hyped. It might be the first time I've ever been upset by an early release of a game, if only for the fact that I was simply not prepared and I'm already so backlogged this year. Hollow Knight is an amazing game. There is reason the internet will not shut up about this and beg for the release of this highly anticipated sequel. While I may talk about the game proper in due time, I wanted to do a ranking of the boss fights of the original title before release. They're clearly some of the standouts of the game, with a highly competent roster of bodacious bugs to combat against. This game has a high roster of insects to rank and duel, and repeatedly knock me down as this game is unapologetically hard. So with that being said, a few ground rules to mention before getting started. This will be ranking bosses off my own inept ranking of their quality and enjoyment for me. Not really off difficulty or anything like that, just my opinions on a casual second run through of this adventure. Next, I will preface I have not beaten every boss. Now, I would love to, but my thumbs are bloody stubs and I cannot take down Absolute Radiance. Pantheon 5 is brutal and such a massive undertaking I cannot even get to it, thanks Pantheon 4. With the last part mentioned, I will group many bosses together. As fans know, there are many refights and dream variants of the bosses. These have different names, more health, new attacks, and maybe a new palette sometimes. For the sake of time, I will group these together and talk about the original and dream when applicable. Mainly due to the majority of these bosses, I do not have much different to say when deciding on the ranking. I will differentiate when needed though, of course. This still leaves us with 35 entries, so buckle in and accept my apology a second time for not being a certified gamer and beating Absolute Radiance without taking damage before forming an opinion on any boss. So no more time to waste, let's get into it, starting with the bottom of the barrel. No eyes and no fun are the game here. I do not like many of the warrior dream fights, despite many of their designs being very cool. This fight declines in actual battle in favor of platforming. Now, that alone is not awful. This is a 2D platformer, but when you can't even get to the boss due to random teleportation it has, while a bunch of apparitions assault you with the attack pattern of Castlevania's Medusa heads, that's great. This is a Metroidvania at its core, but why rip off one of the worst enemies for Christ's sake? That combined with not having a full floor, having a lot of spikes, usually double damage ensues because you get hit and inevitably get sucked into getting skewered below. Add all this up with annoying singing of the boss in lieu of music. Doesn't get annoying after a few dozen attempts, believe me. At the core, I do not have much to say. It's very basic, but when I die it makes me feel like it's a load of bullshit rather than me misreading a move, tell, or clumsy screw up. Having a floating boss with no floor sucks massive ass. With No Eyes being the sole warrior dream exception, I guess it will only get better from here since at least they all have a floor. The Brooding Moloch. I dislike this bastard for a few reasons. One is how often this douche attacks and jumps around. The jumps are too high and it's hard to predict landing. That comboed with the acid spit and the side swipes that would put melee Marth to shame makes this infuriating as you dropping health in no time flat. The arena of this boss is also something I hate. The slightly raised platform grieves me more than I want to admit. I get that's probably the point, as this boss's health would diminish so damn quick if you were always on the same level as it, but just because I understand it doesn't mean I have to like it. Staying on the same level is not an option due to the aforementioned arm swipes reaching a couple miles in either direction. While I am trying to gauge bosses on the base fight, having to see this dick in the Coliseum and cucking me in Godhome anytime I encounter makes me boil to no end. Any fight I could see repeated and you chose the Dune popcorn bucket with an STD. Great. The Fluke Marm has two variations to this fight. One is reaching the sewers early game and getting decimated by the overwhelming amount of minions this worm excretes. That happened this time, and I was confused as I thought this boss was something of a joke before. Well, going back when you have an upgraded nail and also having the Abyss Shriek makes this boss a joke. The challenge one can see is mainly the arena not having optimal nail hitting points. If you cannot dispose of the little guys fast enough, the Fluke becomes nigh unhittable and bullet helly. Either side I look, however, I do not care. It's gross. Neither path I took made me enjoy the fight. The arena is not fun and it really just feels like a boss I want to pass through with the Abyss Shriek and move on just to hit every boss. With how fun these fights can get, being a simple sponge to soak a few attacks until death as the preferred way is really why it sees such a low ranking for me. I also hate the area of the sewers for this annoying mini fluke noises. I think going deaf would be a preferred outcome. Next warrior dream of this jumping block is the bouncy ball of death, Marmu. Its sole attack is just ricocheting. Hope your parry game is on point. It is not the most difficult unless you maybe want to try for a no-hit, as that could probably get real damn infuriating. It's mainly down here because it feels lazy, and other bosses have a similar gimmick with one of their many attacks instead of just one. At least you fight on solid ground. While clearly not high, I know many would place Markoth at... This is mainly due to the Pantheon appearance being one of the most bullshit, since they dropped the floor, making my statement about No Eyes age real poorly. As I said, I wanted to judge a lot based off the base appearance, but that really doesn't do Markoth any favors. He copies the nail shot attack from another Warrior Dream fight and has annoying floating shields that get in your way. Of course, the shields also hurt you, and I just love trying to find an opening to hit this moth. The battle drags on, especially with no floor. There is really no good angle to hit him at, and I get why so many people hate him with a passion. Of all the bosses to drop a floor, this one was simply not it, if you ask me. Honestly, his ranking this high is purely off of his design. He's my favorite of the Warrior Dreams, but that can only really take you so far. The rest of the fight still sucks. Well, we moved on from the bosses I considered bad, and now we moved on to the grouping of bosses I call, Why Are You a Boss? Most people seem to group these guys near the bottom of every Hollow Knight boss quality ladder, and yeah, this one's really no exception. Now, Vengefly King is up first. Just a large Vengefly, a basic-ass enemy. It didn't really feel like a boss in the main game and then just shows up in the Pantheon like it belongs there. No one invited this motherfucker, trust me. The reason for the bottom of this grouping is mainly the lack of hitting and how boring the fight is. It just dives back and forth and back and forth. Adding a second one in Godhome is really telling you that you had to double the boss just to give it some semblance of challenge. Other than that, extraordinarily unremarkable. Once again, why is the Massive Moss Charger a boss? If this was a solo boss not hanging out with the rest of these lads, I would maybe appreciate it as a meme placement, but unfortunately, it is not. It is a Moss Charger that you most definitely killed a few dozen by at this point. Oh, and it jumps. Ooh. While one of, if not the first potential boss you may encounter in the game, the Gru's Mother is extremely basic and easy. It lumps itself in with bosses that are too lazy to think up more than one attack and die after putting up negative effort in this fight. Nothing else. At the apex of mid-bosses is Soul Warrior. It mirrors others that I didn't even think this was a boss upon first encounter, but it's the most inoffensive. Its moveset is fine, it's not super difficult unless paired with other enemies like in the Colosseum. Not much else here, it's fine, but ultimately forgettable. Doubling back on Castlevania references, Galleon decided to mimic death in both status and attack patterns. The constant spinning weapon is already one thing, but over time, more spinning items of unknown dubious origin spawn in, getting hectic real quick. Maybe it's a real patience tester, but I don't have it, and I kinda say I'm a big fan of it. At least it puts up a fight and tries to do something, even if Galleon himself barely does anything more than float menacingly. While simple, I actually enjoy the basic attack pattern of Elder Who. It keeps me engaged enough and I can still catch you off guard. I think early game this would be worse, as less options for attacking directly above you makes this fight drag out. Pairing it with the lack of Shade Cloak also would suck. Late game you get a Bitch Shriek as per usual, but all of this ties into being an overall fine Warrior Dream and boss fight. Good job just being okay, placing you in the top 3 of Warrior Dreams. The Oblevels fit the moniker of many below it on this list, as I simply did not realize they were a boss proper until I got to Godhome. They are placed right at the end of Colosseum 2 and the Colosseum of Fools, and I simply try to kill them off as quickly as possible to avoid restarting. All they do is fly around and shoot projectiles in an odd pattern, and after one dies, the survivor speeds up and get a little health boost. It does add a strategy to keeping both alive versus going entirely into one. They still do fall into the category of a sized-up generic monster to a degree, but I think they're still alright. Most likely the first of the Warrior Dreams you encounter due to being in the same area as the Dream Nail. Zero is a totally competent introduction. Design is cool and the battle is fine. It's pretty inoffensive and strays from being super annoying. In line with the rest, the moveset is lacking, but at least it ain't bullshit. Finally, the last Warrior Dream is good old Gorb. Gorb follows suit with Zero and has one attack, but does it with extreme Gorbiness. He is goofy and it makes him more lovable than the rest of his brethren, but the attacks are rather easy to see and react to. Maybe the most interesting thing in the Howling Cliffs, since there is not a whole lot else here. Poor Gorb. Maybe he just needs friends. Design-wise, Nosk is one of the coolest enemies as well as extremely unsettling. A Mimic Spider hybrid is not what I wanted, and thank fuck the game's art style remains rather cutesy, or else my pants would be rather soiled. Battle-wise, Nazca's fine, a better version of the brooding Moloch for me, as their arenas are a bit similar, but Nazca's a bit more ground to work with. The speedy dashing allows you to kind of go back and forth with trading blows in between jumps and an acid spray. He does spend a lot of time running, and it can be annoying to take him out in an efficient manner, but it gives you time for a heal if you need it. The variant of Nazca is the winged version in Godhome, having Hornet as the head instead. Maybe the most unique of variants, but only really due to the fact that its pattern is more of a beefed up Vengefly King with a few Nazca attacks embedded in, as opposed to just being a harder version of the previous fight. Not a choice, but overall, I still think it's a very solid boss with cool lore and fitting for being in the Deep Nest. The Crystal Guardian and his angry sibling are two very simple bosses. This can be challenging for those unprepared or greedy. The main gimmick is hopping around the arena and shooting a beam in your direction. More beams will segment the battlefield, making movement rather difficult, but there is enough of a tell to space out your attacks. And you can also bait the laser into pointing into a completely whack direction and get a free round of hits in. Early game Crystal could be rough, but the Enraged variant can deal some hefty double damage. It was one of my first fights experiencing the dreaded double mask damage, and it helps be careful and check yourself when battling. Reckless fights will cause a quick death. Design is pretty average and honestly kind of a shame it's the only fights in the Crystal Peaks. I feel like they're more beefed up enemies more than anything, but they still do the job and are kind of assholes for guarding the bench. Look, being blunt, if I ranked things based more heavily off like the run back in circumstances, God Tamer would be damn near dead last due to the Coliseum of Fools. It barred this fight behind a gauntlet of some absolute bullshit. Tourney 3 is such a pain. The section with 0 platforms can go eat my entire ass. Similar to Oblobbles, it's a boss I want to blow through since repeating the fights before it is simply not ideal. This sucks as behind it there's a pretty good fight. Thank you Godhome for allowing isolated boss fights. The God Tamer is a section of surprisingly vacant gank boss fights with 2 entirely different enemies. The God is a large, charging beetle-type beast, and the Tamer is a nimble, aggressive opportunist. The dickish little slashes the Tamer goes for in between the more in-your-face charges of the beast, it's rather well done. The 2 split aggro do complement each other well. Oftentimes, the fight ends up being me spamming soul moves to kill the God as quickly as possible. If the God dies, the Tamer just gives up and the battle ends. It's a cool idea and helps with some tactics, as going for the Giant leaves you open to get backstabbed by the Tamer. With the singled out fight, I can say I like the God Tamer a decent amount. The design is appealing and the mechanics are sound. The better taste still resides from the circumstantial evidence, but my thumbs are still recovering from being a certified fool. Is it a safe place to say I dislike Zote? I know it's intentional, as he is a self-important dickwad with heavy ego underneath all of his shell. The fight in the first tourney is funny enough with the hype up acting like he's a ferocious opponent, and then we get probably the easiest fight in the Coliseum. Of course, the book talk bug Bretta dreams up Zote as the man he boasts himself to be, and that's where the true fight comes into play. Even here, I don't really care for Grey Prince Zote himself. I am quite annoyed by his constant grunts and screams, and the shitty fight style he holds is rather fitting, but can get annoying real quick. My biggest question is, why does everything need to have a shockwave? Like, Jesus Christ, give me some time to stand on the ground. Markov was like 13 spots ago. Time to give me back the fucking floor. It is such a head scratcher for me. The makeshift fight style is great thematically, and it still holds an air of unpredictability that even now gives me trouble to read his movements. I try to play careful, but still fall victim to tripping on himself. Zote's a very situational boss. Sometimes I enjoy the fight. It's the embodiment of a meme fight. The subversion of the joke fake out to the Dream variant being a beefed up knight is quite funny and makes for a good use of the Dream portion of the game. Other times, however, I am beyond annoyed and wish I let him die to the Vengefly King. If the fly is too tough for you, you probably didn't deserve salvation. Also, if I were ranking off of Pantheons alone, I would have put Grey Prince Zote at the bottom because holy fuck, you are such a mood killer in the Pantheons. Umu is such a weird boss. Not for design or name, but being one of the more drastically different bosses for base and Godhome. What I mean for that is in the base game, it's an awesome story fight where you team up with the best NPC Quirrell and do win the Metroid. Quirrell will periodically stab Umu for you so you can go in for the attacks, but in Godhome, Quirrell will not be present. Instead, you have to contest with the sidekick Umas, aka the Fog Canyon auto-tracking fuckers. This is able to break past the membrane of Umu for the same kill. Godhome is significantly less fun for me, but even in base, while the fight is peak for lore, story, visuals, it's still over rather quickly, and I still don't feel like it holds a candle to those higher up. Miss you, Quirrell. You're an absolute real one. Now, what I consider to be the first official boss of Hollow Knight is our lad, the Failed Knight. He can be a vibe check and a very great place to show off the boss design of the game. The Knight has very little health, so the main portion of the fight is knocking the armor off of him, and once his helmet drops, hit the squishy interior. On repeat fights, he is super easy and can be breezed through, but he was a hefty challenge on my first playthrough. His dream counterpart, the Champion, still could be pretty difficult, mainly with those doses of double mask damage. The hammer swings deal a great blow to you and will possibly be another of the first encounters with the extra mask of damage on the boss. It does its job perfectly as a great opener for the game and then some on the latter half with the Dreamer variants. As a boss, he's a fun intro, and if you need a sort of challenge, the Failed Champion can at least test your skills, which in my eyes makes him anything but failed. The lad is a successful knight and a successful champion. A boss that absolutely floored me on my first playthrough was the Watcher Knight. These guides do not screw around. There are 6 bugs here, and it starts an endurance run where you never fight more than 2 at a time. This can make the fight last rather long, but any more Watcher Knights would make absolute hell. You can knock the number down to 5 pre-fight, and it still gives you one hell of a challenge. The difficulty can come from their size, attack range, and ability to close the gaps. Isolating one is pretty tough and will only work for seconds at a time. A roly-poly bounce move is cheeks, and getting caught in it is brutal, especially when my ass is trying to heal. Back to story time, I held off as long as I could on my recent playthrough and then took them out my first attempt. I was kinda shocked. Having max everything for sure helps, but maybe I was just mentally prepared for the fight too. For such an unassuming area and design, I never expected these boys to trounce me, but I'll take it. It's an interesting gank fight and one I do not dislike. I welcome the later game challenge. The Traitor Lord was another fight that absolutely rocked my shit on my first run through. The base game has another cool story-based fight where Cloth comes in to help you best the Mantis minions prior to the fight, and then helps deliver the final blow at the cost of her own life. I think the issues for me were dealing with spacing, as well as learning to properly dash for the shockwave attack, which deals that lovely double damage. Actually laying on the assault shows that the Traitor does not have a whole lot of health to back up the rather high attack and aggression. My repeat playthrough, I find the fight to be a rather fun and challenging endgame bout. This is the boss that is probably seen as the game's first real vibe check for many, and is also soon to be the protagonist of our new game Silksong, Hornet. Her initial fight in Greed Path really lays on the speed and aggro she holds, and it really needs you, as the knight, to learn and pick your attacks. She covers the arena in a simple dash as well as having moves that you simply want to learn the tells and avoid. Her second fight in the Kingdom of Edge really messed me up on my recent run. I don't know why, maybe I came unprepared or not upgraded enough, but I had a few dozen failed attempts. My best guess is I severely underestimated her, and I thought it would be just as easy and was in for a rude awakening. She's a lot more hostile, adding new tricks like her web attack proving a good distraction for her to get some sneaky hits in. Being present throughout the game helped her popularity, and I commonly see her in the high tiers of favorite Hollow Knight characters and bosses for good reasons. She definitely earns a reputation, and her fight is a good showcase for how the crazy moveset of Silksong will be. Probably. Being the most interesting thing in the basin, the Broken Vessel holds heavy lore significance, but it's also a fun battle. Being a failed hue, it's a neat collage of similar attacks, strikes, and dashes, littered with the infected acid residue many bosses hold. The Desolate Dive copy has these bubbles that fly out as well as the Headbang of Doom, which causes bullet hell to activate. The Lost Kin ants up the fight by being a generally tougher version, but not much else. I struggled a decent bit for the Lost King, probably same reasons as due to Hornet Sentinel, but its mini hops are the things that took me out. There's also a high constant spawning of the orange pus bubbles in the second fight too, so that also sucks. It feels like a fair duel as you fight a corrupted doppelganger of yourself. For being broken, the little guy puts up quite a fight. Just imagine if he was a perfect vessel. Or a pure vessel, if you would. While the Absolute Radiance is the boss that I cannot get to thanks to Pantheon 5, I have taken down the inferior version and have seen enough to make an official assessment. And if you think that's lame and that sucks, well, tough titties. The Radiance is the final boss of Hollow Knight, and this moth doesn't put up a fight so much as it does send you into a platforming hell. The Radiance has a barrage of spears, light balls, and pillars of light to send your way, and, of course, for a lovely 2 mask damage for each. It is nothing controversial to say, but this shit is hectic and difficult. You don't get time to heal, and you don't get time to react sometimes. Absolute Radiance is faster and has a few new tricks, more health, and phases. I will say I feel like some of the things feel a little bullshit, keeping its placement here mainly the amount of attacks it throws at you non-stop. You have to be locked in for such a long while. Even I cannot disagree though that this is a magnificent final challenge, and one fitting for our little bug. Honestly, that victory climb up and the cathartic beatdown you get at the end is so damn gratifying. One of the coolest ideas brought into the Godhome DLC was the Pantheon bosses, unique fights to top off each of the gauntlets. Similar to others, you can fight them in a solo fight in the Hall of God, so it helps me with analyzing the bosses a bit deeper. Here is our first of the Pantheon champs, Nailsmith brothers Oro and Mato. Seeing these masters of the nail finally in action is a cool sight to see. Even cooler is when they team up for a tag team bout to smack your ass back to the lobby.
I really hate to be the dude that fucks with us. You think?
Starting with 1, I appreciate the introduction they give to the player, learning the moveset without a gank. Once beaten, the second brother drops in and they go at you in a duo fight. It gets pretty hectic, and it demands you understand the movesets. Coming off the admittedly easy Pantheon 1, this is a pretty high leap in difficulty to actually best the boys. I welcome it though, they remind me similarly to the Watcher Knights in size and fighting, as their larger size does nothing to hinder the quick and agile movements they boast. This is, however, a great opening act to the insanity of the final trials that will await you in Godhome. The Collector is one goofy-ass psycho. This man loves mason jars as much as your average figurine collector and will put you in one along with his minions. He constantly hops around dropping jars all over the arena. A little bit of the fight is some RNG to hopefully not have a dome of glass hit your head and crack open your skull, but still needs you to have quick reaction times to target the minions or lose control to fight fast. Sticking close seems to be a good strat as you can track the hops a bit better, I find. It is not the most difficult despite being encountered later on in the game, but as an optional fight, holding back a decent haul of grubs too, I like it. He's goofy, his design is cool, I like the general mystery he adds to the world, and his screams and whooping, that shit's so funny. My first few attempts of Nail Sage Sly were pretty negative. There's a small ass hitbox and a giant nail covering Triplet's frame. Getting into the rhythm here though is extremely fun. I really enjoyed the first phase of Sly and his little flips. I saw a comparison to Yoda and honestly I couldn't agree more. The flying skills he has, but we finally get to see in action after the rest of the Nail Warriors is a very cool sight to see. My only complaint is that I still dislike that final phase. That held me up so long and the chances to hit him are slimmer than the hitbox he already has. Still holding in the top 10 because it was a fight I really came to love. It's super fun and just satisfying to beat. Do not be fooled by this placement. This is, without a doubt, the shittiest boss. The Dung Defender is another goofy lad. I really like this archetype clearly. Hanging out in a not so fun area, our Beetle of the Stank does exactly as you would assume. Roll around and throw shit at you. Can't really put my finger on it, but it's the bounciness of the movement, his joyous shouts, and the general momentum this battle carries with how the defender goes about the fight. At a glance, the poop balls and the fecal walls can be seen as a lot on screen, but there's actually ample times to get hits in or heal, and it's all on spacing. Learning that is paramount to this fight, and once it all clicks, the fight just becomes that much more enjoyable. The White Defender has the same but more, and I think it's even better. The frailty of the base form is fixed up, and the speed of the fight just feels so much natural. He's a fan favorite for a reason, that's for damn sure. No idea if this is a hot take or not, but I frickin' love the Hive Knight. I love the Hive too, as an area. Yeah, B-City is real, there is a lot there, and the run back is pretty annoying. But the area just sticks out as being so different, while feeling like a whole natural area of Hollow Nest. The Hive Knight does nothing crazy. He's a bee knight, he flips around, sets up spike traps, and vomits an ungodly horde of bees. Lovely. Similar to the Dung Defender, the pacing and the flow of the battle really sells it for me. It's not too long, it's an enjoyable duel that has me wanting more. Another hot take, I wish the Hive was a bit bigger. Not even an opinion actually, just straight facts at this point. Sorry, but the truth stings. A disappointing portion of the finale was the lack of a fight for the Hollow Knight. It was more of a set piece for the Radiance, and of course, thematically intentional, and really great. The corruption of the vessel was a somber sight to see, and putting that poor bastard out of his misery was something that was really nice to do. Well, thanks Team Cherry, because actually putting the Hollow Knight in full power at the end of the game would have been fucking insane. Pure Vessel is the Pantheon Vorchamp, and is such an undertaking to go over. Do not be fooled by a similar styled moveset. Unlike the other Dream Bosses or variants, the Pure Vessel is ungodly powerful and relentless. This is a multi-phase fight where you have no room to even slip up once. Barring of the inclusion of Absolute Radiance for obvious reasons, this is my toughest fight. This took me over 4 fucking hours to take down. My first attempts at this fight were a couple seconds at most, so seeing this fight to the end was really gratifying. It was a dance of trading blows, and once that ladder phases ensue, there's so much shit that happens on screen that makes it hard to keep track of. To even see the end, I had to near perfect the first 2 times I downed the vessel for a chance to see the final phase. It's a well-crafted fight, and my only complaint is the hitboxes on some attacks. I could really never figure them out. The tentacle hit at the end phases and that spike slam attack, trying to squeeze in between 2 of those felt like a coin toss of taking damage. I almost thought I was going to have to make this list without having the vessel beaten, but it feels so damn good to best a true Hollow Knight. You ever fight a boss and then compiling some sort of list in your head, you see just how high they actually made it, not being able to have a good reason? Well, that's a Soul Lord or Tyrant for me. First playthrough, this was another boss that rocked my socks, and going back to it, I could see why, but it was also a lot easier to best the Lord for me. The boss spends his time warping between spots and shooting projectiles at you. This could be misconstrued as some bullshit, but it's done with a fairness that I did not expect. With how hectic this fight can get, there are times you can evade and heal if timed well, as many places to sneak in hits depending on your build and playstyle. Both forms can get challenging in that final phase with the literal crash out this man has. It works as a good fake out for the player on first run-throughs. Soul Tyrant is the same, just a bit more to it as well, and I love it a lot. It's a fight I have genuine blast with every time. Design-wise, I would have never expected it, but when a battle is fun, mediocre design doesn't really mean a whole lot to me, I guess. The real reason why I wanted to play Godhome DLC is Paintmaster Shio. Paintmaster Shio is such a fun fight. While it's the easiest of the Pantheon fights for me, I think it's how the mechanics all flow together and the clever visual design, combining this all into one blissful canvas. Shio's attacks are all easily telegraphed by the paint color. For example, yellow is a horizontal stab and purple is sort of an AoE burst. The tip of the paintbrush gives you just enough time to react as long as you got the colors memorized. Now, only being 4 colors, this is not that difficult of an undertaking, but you still must be quick on your feet. Aside from that, it's simply a glorious time from start to finish, a little lacking in HP, but I feel the fight mechanics makes up for the difficulty. A cool character design, utilizing the Nail Brothers with completely different moves and having it be visually appealing to look at. A world this drab and void of color that Hollowness finds itself in, I love how the bosses are anything but that, and their visuals and colors always pop, even in the grayest of areas. Side note, I love how the arena becomes slowly paint covered over the course of the fight. It's just a nice touch. The pinnacle and example many point to for excellent boss design to Hollow Knight, moves, general battle aesthetic would definitely be the Mantis Lords. A fair difficulty spike in the early game and by far one of the most fun bosses in video games. The Mantis Lords are relatively simple at a glance. You fight the first lord and do a lovely tango between insects. Once defeated, the next 2 show up simultaneously. Nothing changes save for the double the trouble. If you struggled with one lord, well, just pack it up. Everything in this fight is perfectly spaced out, given just enough time to react fairly, but still requires skill. I keep saying similar, but this is quite literally a dance of a battle. You don't really get a second to relax, but it's done with such respect to the player that I feel it never comes off as cheap. Entering the Pantheon variant is the Sisters of Battle, which gives you all 3 to contend with at once. It's an excellent move up without feeling cheap, as well as it just adds to the tension of that makes the fight that much more brilliant. This has little to no flaws, a sentiment that seems shared with the community. Pretty much everyone seems to have the lords at some of the top spots for their personal lists of Hollow Knight bosses. And yeah, it makes sense. You already fucking know. The Grim Troop DLC is peak for adding the coolest character in the game, Grim. After the fetch quest, the troop leader battles you in a pretty crazy fight. It's a load of fun, stringing together so many different attacks that you need to be aware of, as a slip-up could be costly. Learning Grim's moveset was a feeling of intense satisfaction for me. This could be even double with the Dream version, or should I say Nightmare version. Nightmare King Grim puts the battle to 11 and destroys your perceived feeling of having skill. Similar to the Pure Vessel, my first fight had me probably last less than 10 seconds. The moves are very similar to the original, save for the speed up, bigger hitboxes, and now fire AoEs. It felt genuinely impossible the first few attempts, trying to get a single second to grasp his giant pool of attacks. After a while though, I feel like I hit a zen state. The moves that felt blindingly fast became clear and the battle became completely manageable after a certain point. You cannot let up still, but you gotta learn every portion of Grimm's moveset to understand what's the ample time to hit and heal. Not that you got a lot of time for that anyways, but here we are. Hollow Knight's music as well is legendary, and the boss's themes are no exception. Nightmare King Grimm is another piece that just sets it above the rest. Figured I'd mention that at least once in this video. He is one of the hardest bosses in this game, no doubt. It took me so long to get done. I couldn't imagine perfecting it. But you know what? Call me a masochist, but I think I loved every second of this battle, beatdowns and all. Victory against the king never felt so good. Hollow Knight is such a glorious game that you need to try it if you somehow haven't. While it can kick your ass and will kick your ass, it has an air of giving you a motivation to keep trying and best the toughest challenges. It's an unforgettable experience, one that I know Silksong will deliver on. I just hope I can beat every boss for Silksong. Please, please nothing like Absolute Radiance again, that would be great. Direct a video on this game proper at some point, because talking about more than just the boss roster is really needed. There is so much to love about this game. Indie games are really pushing the envelope for some of gaming's greatest.